Hello UK fans, Madarania, and welcome to a deck profile with Psi-Frame, the new psychic archetype which is coming out in High Speed Riders. So let's just jump into this. The main aspect of the deck is that all of them, bar the vanilla monster, are hand traps, which is activating from the hand in response to any of their effects, each having a different effect it responds to. Epsilon responds to trap cards, Delta responds to spell cards, Gamma responds to monster effects, which all negate and destroy, not the effect of a spell or trap. So if it's face up like a Cliff or Scout and using it to pay 100 effect, that does not get negated. I should just mention that there. But if you're activating it first for the first time, then yes, it can negate that. Also, there is Beta, which is basically Mirror Force for that monster attacking and ending the battle phase. And Alpha, which changes the summon, summons out the two materials, and then adds a Psi-Frame card from your deck to your hand. All need to have access to the vanilla monster, Psi-Frame driver, and their spell should summon themselves, and then the driver, and then negate or do whatever that is necessary. And the aim of the deck is just to disrupt your opponent's plays and make them basically rage quit sometimes. But it's very fun to play with and is very cool, and possibly in the next anti-meta deck, RMH. So yeah, I'll go straight into it. I'm running triple driver. Some play 2. You can't play 1 in the deck. You have to play either 2 or 3. 2 does give you a little bit more wiggle room for other stuff in the deck, but you're at a vulnerability of if you banish 2 your drivers, you completely can't play until you draw something like Path. So I'm running 3 just so I have that option of having an extra driver that isn't banished. Maybe conceal in my deck until they think I have no more drivers and they start to do their good stuff, and then I bring out another driver and they won't expect it. Next, I'll go into that one card in a minute. Next, Epsilon, playing 2. Most are not playing 3 anymore because they're changing meta. And in the OCG, they play decks that have 34 monsters and 6 spell cards. Only trap line is in the side deck. I would side 1 Epsilon and keep 2 Epsilons in the main deck because the main out to this deck is a trap card. Next, Delta, triple Delta, because we're in the zone where spell cards are so prominent in the decks of every duelist, and monsters are spell cards now. So Delta is very, very powerful at 3 cards in the deck. It also reflects OCG's choices right now, like Breaker, the Magical Warrior, and Magic Drain, because they're anti-spell cards. We need to keep our deltas at 3. 2 would be alright, but 3 is what you need right now with the changing meta. Triple Gamma, because monster effects are so prominent in this environment, so Gamma is very applicable at this point. Triple Beta, because you need some defense, and if you're not running Mirror Forces, Beta is the best option because it can destroy the monster that's attacking and then end the battle phase, which is very nice, and it gives you access to Zeta. And Alpha, which is at 3. There's a glitch on the Salvation server where it banishes it during your opponent's end phase, but it is supposed to be your end phase. And that should be resolved by the time this video comes out, hopefully. And what it does is chain to the normal special summon of a monster, summon out your driver with this card, and then add a Psi-Frame card from your deck to your hand, which is very good. It's the searcher for the deck, and it's very nice to have. It also gives you a little bit more defense as well over Beta. Okay, onto the non-Psi-Frame monsters. We have triple card D, which is amazing in this deck because you usually don't do anything on your first turn, or on your turn at all actually. If you don't have a Synchro out, you basically just summon your card D, draw 2 cards, and then on your opponent's turn do stuff. Basically you don't do much on your turn. And Zaborg the Mega Monarch. This is my tech for the deck. It's a very powerful card and is a win condition by itself for most decks. It requires a tribute of 2 monsters, or a tribute summoned monster, 1 tribute summoned monster, but I don't have any other tribute summoned monsters, so it would require 2 tributes, When it is tribute summoned, you can target one monster on the field and destroy it. Then if it was a light monster, both players send as many cards as possible from their extra deck to the graveyard, but no more than the original level of the monster, or rank, which is nice as well. And if it's tribute summoned using a light monster, you gain the additional effect of choosing those cards that are sent from the extra deck to the graveyard. So you'll be choosing your own from your own extra deck, which would be your Psi-Frame monsters, and then your some other synchros are not going to be effective in that duel. And whatever is going to hinder your deck or is going to be vital for their success in the duel, you send to the graveyard. So for example, Shaddolls. If you want to get Shaddolls, most of them just play 7 or 8 Shaddolls. If you can send all of those to the graveyard, they can no longer fusion summon. So you don't matter if you have a Synchro on the field and they draw a Shadow fusion. They have nothing to go into it. They need to use something like Ygopro Emerald, which I would also suggest getting into the graveyard as fast as possible. So then they can't play you anymore. So Zaborg in itself is a win condition, but it's useless in a mirror match because your opponent probably will negate it very easily, and any decks that have massive effect negation, you should not use your Zaborg, you should side it out. But against decks like Tellers that are not running Phoenix Chain at a maximum, Shaddolls, and decks that are really based on their extra deck, this can be very vicious. And it's also 2800 beater if your effects are negated, so that's nice too. Next on to spell cards, we have triple Psychic Field Zone, the Fields, and that is an amazing spell card for this deck. It's an old one from Extreme Victory, and you select 2 of your remove from play monsters that are Psychic, 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner, return them to the graveyard, and then special summon 1 Psychic type Synchro monster from your extra deck in face of defense position whose levels are equal to the total levels sent to the graveyard. So you can easily bring out Terra King Fort Ruler Archfiend, your Omega, or your Zeta, or maybe even Electrancer, or even Psychic Blaster at the possibility of doing that. So that's very good, and since you have the possibility of your opponent not even attacking those drivers on their turn and them getting banished during that end phase, you can use Psychic Field Zone and gain back what you lost. Next one, Regeki, staple in this current meta, Psychic Path. This is a very good card. Pay 800 life points to select 2 of your remove from play Psychic types and add them to your hand. This is what the deck is lacking, because most of them will be banished. They all banish themselves during the end phase of the turn they were summoned. So if you haven't synced with them with Circuit, as I'll go on to in a minute, they get lost, whereas Alpha lasts until your turn, until the end of your turn, so you have access to Synchro with that. And Path will be able to add those drivers back. You won't really want these back as much as you want your drivers back. If you lose all your drivers and have no access to them, that's just game. There's no way of coming back from that. So you need to draw into your Psychic Paths. I'm not playing free because that could clog. I was originally playing Psychic Overload, but it wasn't effective enough. Psychic Path is more effective. Next, double Terraforming, because the field spell is very vital for this deck. Triple Duality, because you don't special summon on your turn, most likely, unless your opponent activates a trap card. The next is Triple Circuit, the main card for the deck. This is amazing. It's a field spell, when a Psi-Frame is special summoned to your side of the field, you can immediately, after that card resolves, you can Synchro summon one Psi-Frame with Psi-Frame monsters you control as Synchro materials. It doesn't have to be a Psi-Frame Synchro monster, so you can bring out Black Rose on their turn, or you can go for something like Crimson Blader, Fort Ruler, Scrap, whatever. Michael also a good option for this because it's light deck. So we have a lot of options, although they could easily empty it and then it would not be working, but this is what you need out when you've got your Psi-Frames. If you get this out, you have a high advantage of bringing out Synchro more or less every turn. And yeah, its second effect is an honest-like effect. When a Psi-Frame you control battles an opponent's monster, you can drop a Psi-Frame from your hand and it gains attack equal to that monster's attack. So the best situation to do that is with Driver and add 2500 to any of your Psi-Frame monsters, so that is very powerful. and this is searchable through the effect of alpha. So you've got 2, 5, 8 searches to get this, plus 6 draws there. Next, 1 bottomless because that's stable right now, 1 solemn because that's stable, and another very powerful card for the Psi-Frame archetype, which is Psi-Frame Overload. It is very powerful, I should say. Once per turn, you can banish 1 Psi-Frame monster from your side of the field or your hand, and then target 1 card on the field and banish that face down. Therefore, it doesn't gain its banishment effects, and it's kind of stuck. You can return it, but you won't be able to see what it was, unfortunately. But it's kind of very damaging, and if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to add a Psi-Frame card from your deck to your hand. You can't use it on the turn it's sent to the graveyard, but you can use it the turn after, and it's during either player's turn. So say it's sent to the graveyard during your turn, your opponent's next turn, you can banish the Overload, add a Psi-Frame that you think you're going to need, or add the circuit, which is vital for the deck. It's very powerful, and it's not once per turn. It's not once per turn for Overload itself, it's 1 per turn per Overload, so that's very powerful. Okay, onto the Synchros. We have Black Rose Dragon, nuke the field obviously, and Moonlight Rose Dragon, although if you're playing this in the TCG in the UK, you will not be able to play Moonlight Rose Dragon, so I would suggest something like Ancient Sacred Weaving, or an extra Zeta, just to make it very powerful, and replace the overpowered Synchro monster that is Moonlight Rose Dragon. Next, 1 Psychic Life Transfer, because life points are very unpredictable in this deck. You could have a nice 8,000, or you could be at like 200 life points. Psychic Life Tracer could be your only lifeline, and that's very nice. And you can also, through its effect, you banish a Psychic type monster from your graveyard to gain 1,200 life points. So that can give you access to Path at maximum yield, or give you access to the field zone, and that's very nice there. 2 Zeta, I was thinking about bumping up to 3, but Moonlight Rose Dragon is in the deck, and I can't move that out, unfortunately. So I'm using it at 2 at the moment. There's 2 uses for this Zeta. The first is its actual summon through the Psi-Frame circuit, or your turn summon with Alpha. Zeta can, during either player's turn, regardless of phase, you can target 1 face-up attack position special summon monster your opponent controls, banish this card and that card until your next standby phase. So it gets rid of some problem cards like 101 that's going to target this, or Castell, or Exciton. It deals with those problematic cards. And if it's in your second effect, is usually if it's been destroyed by battle, or a card effect, and I wasn't able to chain it, or if I've sent it to the graveyard through Zaborg's effects, I can activate the second effect when it's in your graveyard. You can target 1 Psi-Frame card in your graveyard, return it to the extra deck, which is 1 other Psychic Frame card in your graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and then return the target to your hand. So it can resupply Psi-Frames that are in your graveyard over the Psychic Overload ability. So that is very applicable and very good with Zaborg, as you can resupply and gain some of your extra deck back that you've lost through its effect. I'm using 2 of those, but it's a possibility I'll use 3 in the future. Clearwing Synchro Dragon, because that's a very powerful level 7 Synchro, and Michael, because you have the access for it, and management is nice. Next, onto level 8, we have Thought Ruler Archfiend, very powerful monster. I have yet to go into it in a proper duel, so yeah, but it's always a good option, increasing your life points and protection from spells and traps to target a psychic monster on the field. That's good against ring of destruction, etc, etc. Then Scrap Dragon to destroy your own Overload and gain a plus off it. 2 Omega. Omega is very, very powerful in this deck. During either player's main phase, you can banish this face-up card and 1 random card from your opponent's hand and return them during your next standby phase, which is very powerful, disruptive like hell. You could just set 1 of their face downs and you can chain it, banish. You could have banished the second face down that they were going to set. Maybe the first one was a dud, and then you just banished the Mirror Force. How good was that? And you won't be able to see what you banished, unfortunately, but it will disrupt your opponent's plays. If you've got 2 Omegas out with a Zeta, that's basically a game, because your opponent can't play much except for a mass nuke. Yeah, and that's probably going to be torrential tribute, because Regeki, you can just chain to that. It's a quick effect. It also has a second effect. During your opponent's standby phase, you can target 1 banish card and return it to the graveyard, which is very powerful for zombie decks, as you can return banished Mizukis to the graveyard to resupply and resummon massive monsters. This is amazing generic level 8 Synchro monster. Zeta is also generic, but it's pseudo generic. It's not the best one, like Clearwing Synchro Dragon would be better. But this one is one of the best level 8 Synchro monsters. And it also has the effect that if it's in your graveyard, you can target 1 other card in the graveyard, in any graveyard I should say, so it's not, if your graveyard just got an Omega in, you can use the effect to put your card in your opponent's graveyard to the hand, and if you do, shuffle that card into the deck and this card into the extra deck. So that's very good, it can resupply itself and works with Zaborg as well. Next, Crimson Blader for Mirror Match or for any Synchro Pendulum duels. Scarlight, or it's now known as Scarlight, which is a bit stupid. Using this, while we won't have this in the TCG until November, we'll probably use something like Stardust Dragon instead. But Scarlight is good for an extra bit of burn damage you'd need. Next, the level 9 Synchro monster, which is Hyper Psychic Blaster. A very powerful card, but is not being used much because there's no real use for it and it requires Psychic type monsters. But you can bring it out quite effectively in this deck. It inflicts piercing damage and then you gain life points equals to the damage you pierce. So that's very good. And level 10 Synchro, which is Leo. Everyone plays Leo if they've got access to it. So yeah, that's the Psi-Frame deck. As for outs for this deck, Mind Drain is the biggest problem. Mind Drain is going to be the new Floodgate, which stops cards that activate in the hand from activating, which is decently good against Necros, but very vicious against any hand trap decks. This is the first of its kind to be a full hand trap deck, more or less. So Mind Drain wasn't a Floodgate until now. Well, it was a super Floodgate. Another problem is Imperial Iron Wall, which can hinder cards like Psi-Frame Overload and your Synchros. It won't hinder your effect monsters, but it will hinder your Synchro monsters and your trap card. So MSTs are definitely needed in the side deck. Also, Vanity's Emptiness is a typical card that affects everybody's deck, and if they can maintain it, they've got game. If they can't maintain it, then that's very bad for them. I would suggest running Typhoons at triple in your side deck because you really need it, and your opponent may not be putting in Mind Drains in their main deck. They won't be making that meta call. They'll be probably making a meta call for Cosmo or Magispector. So MSTs are not really needed in the main deck. They're better for a side deck. But a lot of them, you need to triple MST, you need to side them in. Also siding in 1 Epsilon as well if your opponent is massively using traps. Because it's either using mass monsters or mass trap cards. There's no mass spell cards anymore because the spell cards are monsters. So yeah, MSTs have to be in your side deck. And other cards you could use for this deck are Overload, which is very powerful and which supplies takes from your graveyard and resupplies you with 2 more cards. Or there is Jumper, which is another tech card you could use, which is basically creature swap, but you get to choose what you get from the opponent, so that's good. So yeah, there's a lot of access in this deck to a lot of psychic support that was never really used that effectively. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this and think this is a decent one. If so, please thumbs up. So yeah, I just like to have a thumbs up for this deck because it's a really nice deck to play. If you love Disruption as much as I'm starting to love it now, this is definitely the deck for you. It's going to really piss off your opponent and they probably going to rage quit. You may even see your IRL rage quit. That'd be awesome. So yeah, please leave your comments below if you've got any suggestions for the deck and how to make it better, and I'll review those and see if they're effective or not. And yes, please like, subscribe if you enjoyed this and want to see further content. Thank you for watching. Matt the Rad signing out.